Welcome to the Authenticity Calling podcast. I am your host, Relitza Spasova, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Jamie White. And I never like to assume titles, so I'm going to ask you, Jamie, what would you call yourself in this magnificent world that we get to be authentic and live our truth?
Oh wow. I was about to come in very with a very basic life coach, business mentor, but when you're talking about like authentic living, I kind of like the thing of like everlong or like lifelong student because I think that's really what this kind of career is all about. Like I think most types that are coaches are really lifelong learners in the background and they've just realized that they can kind of capitalize off that interest through the profession. So that's probably a bit more appropriate.
I love that. Yeah, I absolutely appreciate that. And that is one thing I learned about coaching from my mentor coach, Alyssa Nobrega. She basically said, your clients are going to be your mirrors, and there's going to be just as much growth for you as there is for them. So I
Mm.
really appreciate that perspective. And I think a lot of people look to coaches to be sort of that professional of all things, that all knowing, and it's just simply not what we're here to do. We're here to really reflect and support people in finding their truth is what I find.
That actually, that to be honest, confused me quite a lot. At the start, some of the coaches that I was being recommended to, I would sit in front of them and I'd be like, oh my God, these are like mad as a bag of cats. But it was actually in their authenticity of owning over their true selves, that there was the highest opportunity for value in them. But my naive eye, initially speaking, kind of just was like, oof, I don't want that. Where's the more kind of performative, normal, black and white type that is slightly less threatening. But yeah, that's actually one of the really nice things about this work that you actually come to appreciate individuality all the more and authenticity so much more. Um, Funny career, right?
It is. It's an interesting career. I think we're always on our growth edge. So I appreciate that perspective of a lifelong learner. I think that's something that I always embraced. People say, when are you going to stop studying or learning new things? I'm like, never, when I'm dead. Like
Never.
that's why we're here to evolve and to learn and to, question our values and our morals and our systems and upgrade them as the world changes. I think that's the only way that we will actually evolve.
I know. I know. I get really sad when people are so rigid in their opinions.
Yeah.
And I genuinely I look back at the times when I was most let's say most stubborn or most
Mm.
opinionated. And I can see
Hmm.
I was my most naive at those points.
That's right.
I love that saying. It's like the more I learn, the more I realize there is to learn and how silly I am.
That's right.
Um,
That's the
yeah,
way
so
that comes through.
I love that. I really well I was listening. There's a great sorry, I see him as a great speaker. A guy called John Taffer. He does Rescue in the States, the TV show. But he gave a speech on thinking differently and how, a real trait of success is that entrepreneurs allow themselves to think differently. And that's not just like they think differently to everybody else all the time. No, they allow themselves think differently to how they thought the day prior or even a couple of
Mhm.
hours prior. And I think it's a freedom that so many of us excuse ourselves from and really imprison ourselves in our thoughts. So to give ourselves the ability to think differently is everything.
Yeah, I love that. You're right. It's so funny because I created permission slips for my clients. As soon as I started coaching, I thought everybody needs these because we don't give ourselves permission. Whatever that is, whether it's to say yes or to say no or to take a break or to do the thing that we most want to do. I think for ourselves, especially, I always say, especially as women, maybe that's not necessarily true, that it's more so women than men, but from my
Oh,
perspective,
I will fly the pity flag for men over here.
uh-huh, please do.
Do
Tell
you know
the
what? It's just it's a
truth.
complicated world on every angle. And like, yes, there are so many of us that have so much privilege, but like, my God, it is hard not to find yourself stepping on somebody's toes,
Mhm.
whatever direction you go in, at the moment. And and then on top of that, just things can be really, really challenging. There's enormous expectations on us now. Um, so yeah, it makes sense. It's nice to have. What did you call the slips again?
The which one?
The permission slips. Such a
The
nice idea.
permission slips, just permission slips. Yeah, that's all they are. It's just permission slips. And there was a bunch of permission slips in an envelope. They're actually right here. And I just pull a permission slip. Do you want me to pull one for you?
I would love a permission slip. Thank you.
Awesome. Let's do this. And some of them are blank, so you get to make up your own permission. Yep, you got one blank one.
Perfect.
So
I'll
what
use
would
that
you
in a little
give?
while. I'll create it in a little bit.
What would you give yourself permission to do?
Oh, I am totally putting that in my back pocket. And when I need a certain permission, I'm going to write that down and present it back
Okay,
to you.
awesome. I'm gonna give you one as well, if that's okay with
Thank
you.
you. Perfect.
Time off.
Oof, like a little time out. Nice one.
That's right. Time off, whatever that looks like. It can be the next half an hour after the podcast. It can be an entire week or month off, whatever feels juicy and expansive and liberating and whatever that looks like for you.
Sold. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for playing.
Pleasure. Pleasure.
Yeah, Jamie, it's interesting. When we connected, I'll share one thing that came through for me that was very different, I think, from most people that I usually speak with and that I connect with. Right away, I was a little bit intimidated by you, which I thought, okay, that means he's like strong and his masculine and holds well. And I'm not accustomed to being in the energy of the divine masculine in a way that is safe and permissive. It's just not that common in our world for whatever reason. And one of my callings is to call people forward into that. So there was that. But then we started having a conversation and everything just softened right away because I felt like you were so open, so real, really didn't come with any agenda as much as you're very well spoken. And I think to me, coming from the side of learning sales, I don't love sales, I love service. But from the side of sort of learning sales, NLP, and all of those processes, I think you present yourself very, very confident. And that can be intimidating for some people. And that's what I felt right away initially. But the fact that the conversation was so open, it had no specific direction that you wanted to steer it in, it was just safe. Um, which it's just a comment. There's no question there.
No,
But
it's
I
really
guess,
honoring. Thank you.
yeah, I really, really appreciate that about you and how humble you are. And so I started scrolling on your feed and I looked into different things about you and I saw your post and I actually reposted it. I'm gonna go back to it. About, hold on one second. It wasn't about people pleasing, about the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about imposter syndrome and how you came to redefine that, because I think that really stood out for me because I don't love the term imposter syndrome. I
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't love it.
So, for me, I'm a big believer in reframing. I I I I think it's fascinating how oftentimes we quite pessimistically will frame things, and that framing will quite negatively impact us, and not just in the present, but on and on and on. And so much of my work when I'm with people is to help them frame things or see things in a more complementing light. And if we give an example of, let's say, imposter syndrome might show up as, ooh, you're called to make a speech in work. And, oh God, who am I to be making a speech in work? And I might like, oh God, I'm no doubt I'm going to make a mess of it. And oh, it's going to be so awful. And those feelings, I think, are so human. They come up for all of us. I think all of us have wrestled with them in some sphere of life. And I love the fact that really it's new territory. So if somebody's been called up to give a speech 100 times, they're not going to feel those. So the first thing is that it's a welcoming, it's like an initiation to a new area. And that I really, yeah, I take to as in, so yes, it might feel a little bit funny, but what it's a clear sign of is that you're leaning into an area of growth. You're leaning into something new. And I think if we can, like, the prior framing might be like, oh God, I'm thinking this way because I'm lacking in self-confidence and I'm just not good enough and this and that. And that doesn't serve. But if we see it as actually a welcome and a note of our credit to you leaning into a new capacity, that straight away is a different feeling. And actually when we kind of feel that, it's like, yeah, great, I am. It seeds a different energy altogether. When we recognize its normality, like you talked about me being quite open. I kind of feel that the greatest gift you can kind of share is an openness. Because when I was in my formative years, people just didn't talk about the things that I really wish they did vulnerably. And so when things were happening to me, I thought they were just happening to me. But to know that everybody experiences vulnerability, everybody experiences imposter syndrome, that takes an enormous weight out of it as well. Um, and then going into it in a win-win of, well, do you know what? I might mess up, but if I do, chances are I'll probably learn. And the next time I'll feel all the more confident as a result. And if I don't, well, could surprise myself. I love that of like, how can you look at something and get a positive either way, any eventuality? So yeah, for me, like imposter syndrome, challenge, issue, anything, there is always a way to look at those in a way that perhaps some of us instinctively do, which is negatively. Um, and then there's a way to reframe it in a way that's a little bit more encouraging. And sometimes all it is that we need is a little bit of difference, a little bit of positivity that just helps us get over that edge. And so that's that, yeah, that's a kind of a real key philosophy for me. Ooh, you're on mute.
There we go. I am on mute and it just warned me that. Thank you. Yeah, I was just saying I love that. And if you were to reframe the name of imposter syndrome, what would you call it? Because I think you're absolutely
Uh,
right. I
welcome to the
don't.
next level.
Well, I love it. Welcome to your evolution.
Yeah,
Evolution
yeah, yeah. Like,
syndrome.
yeah. Like because look, it only happens when we're branching out into new territory and new territory that we care about.
That's
And
right.
like one thing that I find is interesting is that there's all these different terms for things that happen in the business world,
Yeah.
but they show up in all other areas of our life as well. Like we talk so much about imposter syndrome when it comes to business, but oh my God, bring it to dating. Like
Exactly.
every aspect of dating is riddled with imposter syndrome. And we know that we just need to get over our nerves and we just need to lean into the process a little bit and build a bit of familiarity, and then we come into our own. But for some reason, some of us only see that in that light and can't transfer that wisdom or bring that wisdom into more professional circumstances. But generally speaking, the progressive growth mindset that we're looking for in business, we already have personally.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so interesting you talk about dating because I'm also single. I'm on the apps. I had this conversation with one of my friends. I flew out to Toronto for his 40th birthday and we talked about how are we going to meet our people, right? He turned 40. I'm on my way there. And he really loves online apps and I really don't. I really love
Mm.
meeting people in person. I think that is one of the most authentic experiences we can have.
So
And when
how
we
can we
talk,
get you off the app?
sorry.
So how can we get you off the apps?
Well, I'm kind of not fully on the apps, but yeah, I think traveling more, being out of the box more. Because I mean, I work from home. I have my corporate career, which is online, for the most part. We do go in person once in a while. But I think for me, traveling has been my favorite way to meet people. Getting out and doing things in the community. I haven't had the most. Um, I've had an interesting experience in Vancouver. Let's put it that way. And I don't know that my person is in Vancouver. So, I've moved around a lot my whole life. I come from
One
Bulgaria.
second, one second, one second. How many people are in Vancouver? What's the population?
Many, 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 many. But I think there's something common. There's like an energy in Vancouver that brings people here and makes them stay. And I think it's
Okay.
because I'm not interested in staying in Vancouver long term. I don't want to meet my person here because if people love
Give me a second.
Vancouver,
Okay,
they're gonna
one second. So
stay.
so the dating
If I'm
works
being really honest.
when you travel. No, 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 no. But like I know the way we jumped into imposter syndrome, but have you heard of limiting beliefs?
Of course.
Yeah, and how about we reframe it that like you're like, I know my person isn't in Vancouver. What about my person could be in Vancouver?
Okay, they could be. I'd have to pull them
It's a
out of Vancouver.
it's a huge city with people that are attracted
True.
to it from all over the world. No doubt there are incredible people out there for you. But at the very, very center of it is your beliefs. And we see what we want to believe.
Yeah,
And I just think perhaps if you were embracing that thought, that slight difference of thought of maybe there could be somebody there for you that might be complimentary.
absolutely. It's funny that you say that because as soon as I got out of Vancouver, I was flying to Toronto. I met someone on the plane. So there you go. There goes my limiting belief. And he's from Vancouver. So there you
Mm.
go. Where that will go, I have no idea. It's very new. However, it did actually make me question that limiting belief because he said, "Oh, I'm from Vancouver. I'm flying to Toronto for the weekend to see some friends." And I was like, "Oh, me too." That's interesting.
Yeah. I I I am a big believer that we essentially we imprison ourselves,
We do.
and we are the gatekeeper of that prison. And limiting beliefs are so sad. Essentially, like we really shrink our worlds down. And when we get to work with people on their limiting beliefs, it's amazing how layer by layer you can really bring expansiveness, abundance, fun, joy, juice. You gave the
Anything
expression
is
of
possible.
juicy. Yeah,
Yes.
endless possibilities. And I yeah, love when we get to kind of challenge our beliefs and something then challenges it, which you had that very experience with a man from Vancouver. That's brilliant.
That's right. The world does that to us, right? And we can take the challenge or we can run away, which, again, speaking to imposter syndrome, I think that's where a lot of people do get stuck. They would rather revert back into their comfort zone, into their little shell,
Mm.
instead of take the challenge and evolve, right? So thank you for lovingly calling me forward. This is what it would be like
Mm.
working with you, I would assume. You
Oh,
listen, you hear, and you call.
yeah, no, like I think that it is so interesting how we expand out of our comfort zone. There's this like key space of our zone of proximal development, just that little bit beyond our comfort where we thrive and our
Mhm,
worlds expand.
mhm,
And interestingly, how we're so attracted to comfort and our comfort zone. But in that space, our worlds don't expand, our worlds actually shrink. And hence we can imprison ourselves with the best intentions in the world. But like it is an odd one. So we actually have to be quite disciplined and quite self-challenging
mhm.
to get that kind of world that we want.
More
Um,
entrepreneurial, it sounds like, because you said, the entrepreneurs that are successful, we had this on a call yesterday. They said only 10% of entrepreneurs are truly successful. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And we started kind of diving into why that is. And so I feel like that curiosity and openness and that willingness to, of course, the willingness to fall and fail, which I think a lot of us talk about. But I don't think enough people talk about this, that sort of that, creativity when we're in that discomfort. I call
mm,
it, there's your option is maintaining the resistance or just do the damn thing and see how it goes. It could go terribly, but it could
yeah.
also go really, really well.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer. You open up all the doors. You trial, you experiment, you see what works, see what doesn't work, and you evolve from there. I was never one that could kind of take too much from theory. I wanted to get stuck into the world. There's a joke. I say I'll always try something twice.
Mm,
And I love living a life from experience and building a life from experience.
mm,
And I yeah, I just think too many of us we can find ourselves tied up in conservatism and pessimism, and that
mhm,
ultimately speaking just doesn't serve. And
mm.
oftentimes, the magic that we're looking for is is beyond that area of discomfort. And so yeah, live a little and challenge yourself a little bit. You never know what's on the other side, and so why not find out?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I love that. It is exciting. It is exhilarating. People talk about jumping out of airplanes. Do that thing that you're afraid of, right? Do that thing that you're a little bit resistant around.
Ideally, with a parachute.
Right. Yes, please. I'm not saying jump out of airplanes. Just do the thing that's been calling you. And I think that's what authenticity calling is all about, is really sharing our stories and having these conversations to support people in recognizing that that thing that they've really always wanted but never truly committed to or tried, that happens to all of us. And I think that's
Mm,
the difference between, again, people who are willing to push the box, people who are willing to live a little, like you said, do the thing that's a little bit scary, or a lot scary, right? So yeah, I really appreciate that. If you were to share, I guess you shared already so much with the audience, but if you were to share one thing that, to call them forward, what would it be? What's that little piece of wisdom or that little nugget or that question maybe to call them into that space?
Uh, honestly, like the real premise of good coaching is that we have all the answers inside us. And so the real key is actually just make a little bit of space to hear whatever that might be inside. So like the real key thing is slow down, try and find yourself a little bit of space. The easiest way to do that is to go for a walk, maybe in nature, or sit down with a nice coffee or cup of tea and just with pen and paper, and just actually tune into that inner knowing that knows what you need to do, knows perhaps it's an awkward conversation, perhaps it's a simple little bit of admin. Um, but I think our destiny leaves breadcrumbs. And in actual fact, it's really, really obvious. Um, Unfortunately, we don't see those breadcrumbs because we're looking too far ahead and
Mm,
wanting whatever the move is to be some big dramatic move. But oftentimes the path to whatever it is that we want is actually quite simple and straightforward. And it's beyond the little awkward conversation that we know we need to do, the little bit of admin, the bit of self-care that leads to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, to a year down the line, having seen all that compound an unrecognizable life exactly where you want it to be.
yeah, yeah.
So
You said destiny, and right away my heart was like, yes, that is it.
yeah,
So
this
do
is
go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say, like, this is a lovely space. Like, there's so many gurus online saying, oh, you need to do this and you need to do that. It's actually really, really nice to know that, wait a second, I actually don't need to listen to all that nonsense. The big thing is actually, I just need to listen to myself.
That's right.
And the path ahead is always so clear and obvious. And no, it's been nagged at in the background. And I don't think any of us actually realize what's possible for us. I think it's so beyond our imagination, but it's a really exciting kind of blind faith, let's say, to have of just, I'm going to do what's immediately speaking in front of me now, 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 now. And time again, I see it in my work and I see it with other people that when they just follow that process, life becomes like,
Whoa.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is exciting.
I love that. That is authenticity calling, literally. You just wrote the book for me. So thank you for that.
Oh,
So I did want to ask you a little bit about your journey in terms of getting to the place of openness. You mentioned dating, and it's something that I actually was attracted to on your post as well. About, you getting to the place where was it that you met your partner? Was it Bali?
do, 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 do. Yeah. So I firstly, like, that journey to yourself, I think is ever evolving. And I I was always kind of playing true to what I shared earlier of trialing and experimenting and
Mm,
enthusiastically jumping into life. And I went to Tony Robbins when I was 17 and really took that, like, motivate, go, go, go to heart.
yeah.
And I did that till I pretty much burnt out pretty spectacularly. And then I got very interested in, let's say, a deeper level of psychology and trauma and understanding yourself and holistics and spirituality. And that took me to Bali, which is just such a magical place because healing is front and center in that land. You know the way they say, like, every land has its energy. If you want to be bold, go to Ibiza. If you want to work, go to New York. If you want to be famous, go to LA. If you want to heal, go to Bali.
Mm,
And it can really be magnificent in that regard, not just for the energy, but all the people that are there. You can learn so much. And I was there at a particularly lucky point over COVID where the tourism just went, and it was filled with the people that actually lived there who were incredible teachers who
mm,
cut their kind of their classes down and really started doing a lot of one-to-one work. And I got to pretty much spend every week of COVID learning, really, really deep
wow.
learning. And I learned in every area, everything I could get my hands on. From all the, like, the cliche leadership and confidence and communication of the business side to relating, intimacy,
Mm,
sexuality, to confidence, to inner child work, to trauma, to psychedelic psychotherapy, like literally
wow.
everything.
How long were you
And
there? Because that sounds
I
like
was there the guts of 4 years.
okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, because in Bali there are 100 different retreats every week,
Yeah.
and in COVID when the numbers were just so short, the barriers to entry were so low that it literally became a thing of, well, let's just do this and let's just do
Mm,
that.
mm,
And so my philosophy has always been like trial, experiment, learn, grow, and and I've just been following that path since, and that's kind of served me to the point that I am right now, which is great. But it's funny, we're always our own worst critic in some regards, and so I do feel that saying that I said earlier remains true, that the more you know, the more you realize you have to know, and the more
yeah.
humble it makes you. So when I hear you say that, on one side I'm like, oh, thank you, but on the other I'm like, You don't have a clue.
You don't know the half of it. Yeah, no, I hear that. And it's so interesting because I mean, when we are public facing, whether it's an online dating profile or social media or our websites, whatever it might be, we obviously we present parts of ourselves. You know, there are so many other
Mm,
parts. And I think that's the thing. We tend to magnify other people's greatness and we minimize our own, which I think is a maybe it's a survival mechanism. I don't know what it is, but it is something innate in humans, or maybe it's learned. But I do really love to reframe limiting beliefs. I really love to it comes natural to me. So we were talking about dating, but it comes natural to me to see people in their essence and fall in love with that essence. And of course, in a romantic relationship, that doesn't always work because then
y-
you have these expectations that the person's going to get there. And you don't actually love them for exactly who they are right here and right now. And for me, it's like I don't see those things. So putting that into a coaching career, I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly what I need to do for my, I get to
mm.
reflect that essence and that greatness in them so that they can claim it and step into it and, move forward with that confidence that, oh, someone actually sees that in me and is reflecting it to me. And it's that constant reminder that, you're unconditionally accepted exactly as you are, and you can claim a little more.
So let's take you back there because you said something really interesting. You said we in the
Mm,
grand scheme, as in like
mm,
humans, we generally see people superior to ourselves, correct? And then you were like, maybe that's a learned behavior. It's not. That's not a general thing. Some people see themselves as bigger and better than everybody else, a superiority complex, and others with a self-worth state might instinctively see everybody else as better than them.
mm,
And that can show up really viciously in relationships where we see our partners superior to ourselves and we kind of almost put ourselves secondary, and all sorts of people pleasing and all sorts of attachment issues will kick in as a result. So it's not a it's not a given. Um, and I would say it's really, really important. Like if you feel that there's a real call to remember how great you are,
mhm,
and to really, and like this is a thing that we all like. One of the most powerful exercises we can do in the self-help or self-wellness space is gratitude, um, and appreciation exercises where we anchor back into what we appreciate about ourselves, what we're grateful for,
mhm,
to build ourselves back up, because the world is always pulling at us and it's always knocking us down.
mhm,
And I said that line that we can be our own worst critic. And if we are our own worst critic and at the same time seeing everybody else is so much better than us, it can take us on a hell of a downward spiral.
mhm,
So I just wanted to call that because I do think it's really, really important. If there is any elements of that, it's a really important trigger to come back to yourself, or
mhm.
call to come back to yourself. Does that make sense? Or is it a bit, have I gotten a bit too intense already?
No, that makes perfect sense. And I think that is the reflection of where I'm being called, right? It's like, as Anthony Robbins says, we make our mess our message. So I think that's coming out of the space of my own personal journey and experience. It's a reflection that's obviously wanted my attention. Again, when we know that the world is a mirror and we're called
Mm.
forward. I think there was another post about codependency that I also want to kind of dive into. We don't have hours and hours and hours. Maybe we'll have to schedule
Well,
another
no, no, no. But let's
podcast.
let's very quickly before we move on, and even like literally put it into practice. Give me three things that you're so proud about yourself, that you appreciate about yourself, that you love about yourself.
I love that I'm willing to show up and do the thing. Like I will do 20 things at the same time and people wonder like, how do you do it all? And I'm just like, well, you just do it. You just do one thing and then the next thing, like you said, you just do the thing, you follow the breadcrumbs and it all kind of just comes together. So I think that's maybe a trust in the universe that I have. And I appreciate that despite all the naysayers, I do the thing anyways. Um, One thing I love is the way that I try to consciously parent my son. I think I'm a conscious
Mm.
parent. Sure, I'll get reflections that maybe that's not so true. Or maybe I'm too open and I'm too, permissive when it comes to asking his opinion or, allowing him to share his perspective. But I really do love the way that I parent and um, I would like to more often. Again, here I go criticizing myself again. I know I caught it. But I think, like to Um, yeah, no, I don't have anything to say right now. It's gone. Just like that, it disappeared.
Oh, look, it is, look, it's almost socially friendly to be putting ourselves down because generally speaking, it lets the other person in front of us feel a little bit better about themselves. And it's, we're not celebrated when we boast. Um, so in a world where we are shaped by our environment and the company we keep, uh, it can be easy to mentally go on a bit of a downward spiral. And uh, simple exercises like anchoring into what you're most proud of, what you love about yourself, they're really, really, really important. And sometimes we hear that and it's a bit woo-woo. And so it's nice to get an idea of like, well, one second, when might I need to do that? And if you find yourself looking externally and taking so much inspiration in other people around you, but not necessarily yourself, it's a call to come back to yourself and to realize your own brilliance. And the nice thing is that the more we do, the more we recognize our brilliance, the more others do around us. And it can be a huge, huge catalyst to our careers. It is a bit of an inside out world. The more we relate to ourselves, the more people are going to relate to us.
I love that. So let me
Anyway,
ask you, I'm going to turn it around. What are
do,
three
do,
things
do, do, do it.
what are three things you love about yourself, Jamie?
Oh, I love my curiosity.
Mm,
I love that side of myself. I love the openness. It's something I kind of really challenge myself on is to be open. Um, so curiosity, openness, and hunger to learn.
mm,
Like at the very forefront of what I do is a call to transformational growth. Like that's hard. That's really, really hard because life is all the time presenting your failings, and you do instinctively want to indulge in them at certain points, but to um to actually take them, to own them, and to see where you can improve is really exciting. So yeah, that kind of that curiosity, that openness, and that hunger to learn is all the kind of core things about myself that I really love.
Now, does that come, I feel like that it almost comes easy for you to embrace the learning and to embrace the, what's on the other side, whether it's the resistance, whether it's the experience, whatever that might be. I
Mm.
don't know. I don't know if that is normal for everyone or so easy to embrace. Do you work with a lot of people that it's not that easy to embrace? And how do
Oh,
you
it's
how do you
so
see?
hard. It's so hard recognizing that like for whatever issues you have in your life, you're responsible for them. And we want to shy away from that. And generally speaking, shying away from it is more pleasurable in the short term. But it's that zooming out mentality of let's look at things over the long term that you really see the benefits of actually chasing the opportunities for growth and chasing the learnings. Um, so for me, there is a lot of discomfort and sometimes people around you as well. Like when you own your shit, when you're like, you're kind of vulnerable, but I've just realized this inside me.
Mm,
Sometimes people don't have an openness to hear that. I don't want to hear that. And so yeah, like I definitely you talked about like an intimidating quality, and look, you could say intimidating, which sounds kind of nice. It's just others might be completely put off.
mhm.
I would have I would say like an almost a Marmite approach. Sorry, in the UK you say Marmite, you either love it or you hate it.
Got it.
And I definitely get that response. Some people are like, oh, I value and appreciate that and I love it. And others are just like, you're weird.
Which
Completely
is
fine.
okay. They're not our people.
Completely fine.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's also that like when we talk about codependency, that people pleasing pattern, right? That some people take on. I think it really does it opens up, it gives permission to put ourselves second. And I think that's where that comes from. I know for me, I was raised in that space and my calling is really to keep pushing that edge. It's like to keep pushing to put myself first, to keep,
Hard, right?
introspecting. It's hard. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really hard.
There's
Yeah.
there's a lot of subjects on this call that we've like very flippantly talked about that are actually really hard. Like you had it yourself when you were like, hey, trying to talk into that second and couldn't get to the third level of appreciation. It's hard.
Yeah.
And um yeah, this stuff, it is difficult, it is uncomfortable, and it's easy to get distracted away from, but hugely impacting. if you can commit yourself to it.
Mm, mm, amazing. Well, we're almost at the top of the hour. I know there's like 20 other things that I want to talk about with you. Maybe we can schedule a part two for this podcast. But if you want to leave our listeners with something, what would that be?
I honestly, I loved that piece earlier that we got to talk about just slowing down and listening to yourself all the more because I feel we are guru obsessed
Mhm.
and not enough messaging out there is telling us how great we are and what fantastic wisdom we have inside ourselves. And the note in terms of figuring out what that is, because sometimes we want the big thing, and
Yeah.
actually, in actual fact, it's like raising awareness around. Oftentimes, it's the smallest of little things that we do differently that ripple out into the biggest of effects. That took me, and to be honest, it's something I kind of miss quite often. But when I do appreciate it, it has such a positive impact. So that's what I would be sharing, and also just saying thank you for the opportunity. It's lovely to kind of connect with you and your audience and share. And if anybody on your side ever wants to reach out to me, all they do is just Google Jamie White, at Jamie White on Instagram, jamiewhite.com, and I would be so happy to connect.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And you already got to the next point. How can people find you? But what I hear is you're sharing your permission slip of time off for people to
Yeah, too
respect.
right.
I love it. Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. There's well, last little piece on that. But there's a great saying about meditation. Everybody should meditate for 20 minutes a day. And if you don't have 20 minutes a day, do it for an hour. Why? Because it saves you time. And oftentimes, like, the idea of slowing down is like, I don't have time for that. But the really nice thing is that when you do it, it saves you so much time. So that's
Mhm.
what I'd be kind of encouraging and leaving with.
Mm. So, so, so appreciated. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being open to these authentic conversations that are unscripted, unedited. We don't know what's going to come up. But yeah, I really appreciate your vulnerability, your openness. We had a little conversation before the podcast as well, which, we'll dive into all the things, I think hopefully in the future. And yeah, I really, really appreciate we didn't talk about masculine and feminine energies and all of that. There's just so much. There's so, so much. But I do really appreciate your vulnerable, open, generous way of showing up that it holds that space to just
Thank you.
be. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Have a wonderful, is it afternoon for you?
It is indeed. Yeah. So
Amazing. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you again soon.
you will indeed.
All right, Jamie, take care.